discussion, The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This wasn't a very good book, I have to say. I did finish the book though, but I thought it was pretty disappointing, particularly towards the end. It lets you down. There's three things I want to say about the book, but before I go there, just for new listeners, why are we talking about books here at the Not Even Wrong podcast? The purpose of the Not Even Wrong podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So book discussions are part of what we do here because we believe reading books is not just a pastime, but actually part of the business. We're in the knowledge business. It's not very clear what kind of knowledge is useful at what point in time. But one thing is for sure that doing the reading as a exercise to train your mind, maybe a bit like yoga for the mind, that is definitely very, very, very good. And we read all kinds of things. This is a thriller. It's a, for lack of a better word, it's a thriller. It's not a, some sort of big picture book or anything like that. But it's nevertheless, I think, important to read books that give you a bit of a, like, they help you look at the world from different perspectives. So very similar like yoga, which turns your joints and muscles and ligaments into different types of positions, helps you be more flexible in life, helps you maybe prevent injuries. I think that's how we see books. They train your mind to be flexible and to be able to react to whatever comes at it. And I think that's what the knowledge business entails. So that's so much for why do we discuss books. Now let's talk about The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I think, again, it's a disappointing book because it lets you down. I think first thing I want to say, Liz is trying to make this a thriller, and she's over thrilling the thriller. There's too much thrill in this. There's too much suspense. It insults the reader's intelligence. Like, you already know what's going to happen before the chapter is finished. You know how she's going to build. Like, it's too predictable. And that's disappointing. I think even within the thriller genre, there's levels to it. And I think we don't like to actually separate literature and genres, because a story is a story. A good story is a good story. It doesn't matter whether it's a biography, whether it's fiction, whether it's a novel, whether it's a thriller or not a thriller. All these things don't matter to us too much. But what really matters is just, is this a good story? And this isn't a good story. It's just not a good story, and therefore I think again, disappointing. I think the other thing I want to say, it's unfortunately the message, the woke message coming across loud and clear. This is a book about the suppression of women. This is a book about how bad men are. This is a book about how rich people exploit poor people. Unfortunately, this message maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago would have resonated. Now it doesn't resonate. Now it's just screaming and yelling by either frustrated authors or politically active authors. I am not, again, we are absolutely open to any kind of story. It doesn't matter whether it's political or not political. Now, this is certainly not the kind of novel where you would expect political undertone, but there is a massive political undertone. And it comes to the point where even, legal intricacies and details are being twisted. For example, a woman commits a crime, she's fine, that's just if she gets away with it. But a man who actually doesn't even commit a crime, he's trying to cover up a crime that a woman committed, and he gets, indicted and goes to jail. It just makes no sense. And I don't know if Liz wanted to do this, but in the end, actually, the most damage is done by women here, even though the whole novel is about how women are sort of the good guys or the good people, and men are the bad people or something like that. But then the damage is all done by women. So I don't know. It's confusing. I think when you're not truth seeking, that's what happens. You convolute your own ideas. You convolute your own stories. This is a bad story. And, listening to the message being this woke infested propaganda that has infected Wall Street, Hollywood and the media industry, whether it's in New York or wherever, it's not helpful. I think there are certain messages, for example, in this book, which sort of happens between the 1960s and the 1970s. There are certain things you can say, yeah, I mean, there was a female emancipation movement in those times, and that was a good thing. But then the manifestation of that movement in the book, which is just all men are bad and whatever women do, women cannot do any wrong, and they're always the smartest guy in the room, and they are the most courageous, and they always do the right thing. It's tiring, and it reminds me of a Netflix show I recently saw with Jude Law and Jason Bateman, and it's just exactly the same message. Like, slowly but surely it sucks you in, and then it's the gay people and the lesbians and the blacks who are doing the right thing. They're the conscious. They're the good guys, and the white men are all the bad guys. And it's just, and then maybe there's one white man who is, good enough to let all these other minorities sort of do the good thing because the establishment is just relentlessly, trying to suppress every good thing, which of course only comes from, again, suppressed minorities, and everybody's suppressed other than white males. So I think, again, I'm tired of this. I think the political message has gone way too far. This novel is a very sad example of how a fun thriller, this could be fun. And I've read in the comments that this was compared to Donna Tartt's debut novel, not the Goldfinch, but the other one. I forgot the name. And yeah, it has a bit of that, but Donna Tartt's novel was just on a different level, much, much more sophisticated, much finer, much more fine-grained. This is not, like, Liz Moore is not a good novelist. She did not do a good job when it comes to telling the story and also the political undertone that she chose to have. Maybe that was important in whenever she wrote the manuscript. It must have been peak woke back then. I don't care. It's disappointing. Now, the last thing I want to say, which is the good thing, is one thing Liz is very good at, though, is building up characters, and I appreciate that as a writer myself. She does a very good job in going back and forth in time and building characters through their past, through their relationships with people. I think she did a good job, on that front, and that's laudable. I think that's actually what keeps the novel alive, because you're interested in those characters. She is able to build very good characters, and then she sort of drops the ball by letting those characters morph into this political message or this sexist, gender biased message that is just boring and uninteresting. But the characters themselves, again, character build-up is it's incredibly important. It's part of the story. It's not the story. I think a story needs a lot more than just characters, and I think this is a good example. The God of the Woods is a perfect example of how good characters don't make a story. Like, you still have to make a story. The Godfather, arguably the best story ever written, maybe after the Bible, uh, is not just, they're not just good characters, but it's a good story. And then of course the acting is amazing. But the point here being, and this is a literary maybe idea that I'd like to convey here, that just came up to me while I was reading the book, is like, you can have good characters and not a good story. Actually, a book that reminds me, a similar book, is The Deluge. Very similar, very good character build up there, but that book was a bit too long. Maybe you could have cut it in half and had a good story, but then it just kept going and going, and it just became unbearable. But again, I think the message is very disappointing. So you can have good characters, but they still have to fit into a good story. And I think, what is a good story? A good story is a story that keeps you in a tense, interested suspense, and that cannot happen with the purpose of suspense. Like, you cannot have a thriller that tries to thrill. A thriller has to thrill natively, coming from its own ingredients, not trying to build cliffhangers and stuff like that. I'm sorry, it's not. That's not what I'm looking for as a reader. So to summarize, The God of the Woods, I would say I would give it 2 stars for the character. By the way, the performance, I listened to the book, so listening to the book is actually a treat. I think the narrator here, she's a very decorated reader. She's amazing, really unbelievable how the woman is able to just play around with voices and create characters through her voice. That is a 5 star just on its own. But again, the book itself as a novel lets you down. It's trying too hard to be a thriller. It's trying too hard to deliver a suspense that isn't there because of the try hard. And then the message, it's just tiring. It's not even political. Look, again, I can't emphasize enough. I do agree with a lot of the feminist movements in the 1970s. I think women should have access to the same opportunities like men. There's no question about that. But then we can't portray that everything is just bad what men do and everything that women do is right. I mean, that's just very cheap black and white thinking. That's not how the world